A U.S. official tells CBS News the Trump administration deported about 20 migrants from countries including Afghanistan and Iran today, sending them to the Central African Republic. An immigration lawyer says one of the deportees was an Iranian pro-democracy activist who had received legal protection in the U.S. The State Department urges Americans not to go to the Central African Republic, citing armed conflict, violent crime, and kidnapping. CBS News immigration correspondent Camilo Montoya-Galvez has more. And Camilo, what else do we know about these deportations?
Well, Nicole, this is the latest front, if you will, in the Trump administration's unprecedented efforts to deport thousands of people to so-called third countries, meaning countries that are not their own. The administration has brokered agreements with several dozen nations across the globe, including in Africa and Latin America, so they can receive and accept people who are not their own citizens. We have seen the administration, for example, send hundreds of Venezuelans to El Salvador to be imprisoned at a notorious mega prison there. The administration has sent people to Eswatini in South Africa, also South Sudan and other African countries like Ghana, Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, Rwanda, to name a few. And the administration says that it is doing this, Nicole, because many of these individuals may not have legal status in the U.S., but they do have protections from being sent back to their home countries because U.S. immigration judges have determined that they could face persecution if returned to their home countries. So in order to essentially bypass and circumvent that, the administration is then sending them to third countries. And the open question now is what happens to people from Afghanistan, people from Iran, people from Iraq, people from Armenia who are being sent to countries like the Central African Republic, as was the case this week. There is no clear guidance from either country, the U.S. or the Central African Republic, Nicole, on what will happen next to these deportees. In some cases, some of the third countries have sent the deportees back to their home countries, even though, again, some of them have said that they fled those countries because of violence and persecution.
Yeah, and in this particular case, I mean, why the Central African Republic, particularly if the U.S. considers it one of the most dangerous places in the world?
And just to underscore that point, I want to read you the travel advisory from the U.S. State Department for the Central African country. It says, do not travel to the Central African Republic for any reason. U.S. citizens are at risk due to unrest, crime, kidnapping, health, terrorism, and other threats. That is coming directly from the U.S. State Department, which also instructs Americans who happen to be there for whatever reason to draft a will, to make a proof of life protocol with loved ones, and also even to leave DNA samples with medical providers in case their families, Nicole, need them for identification purposes. That is how dire the situation is in the Central African Republic, rather, according to, again, the U.S. government. Now, why is the administration sending people to this country? We have been told by administration officials and also immigration policy analysts that even though these deportations are small in scale, relatively speaking, they send a message of deterrence. And that message, Nicole, is that if you stay in the country illegally or you are thinking about crossing the border illegally into the U.S., there is now a chance, it may not be a big chance, but it is still a chance that exists, that you could be sent to a random country, including a country in Africa that, again, the State Department says no one should be traveling to because of insecurity and violence.
And so do these migrants have any recourse, or can they go somewhere else?
It's unclear. The Central African Republic has released no details at all about what it plans to do with the deportees that have just been sent there by the U.S. Neither has the Trump administration or U.S. officials. In some cases, African countries have housed deportees from the U.S. in hotels. Some of them have been able to stay there in those countries, but many, in fact, have been returned to their native countries. And again, that is a concern from many advocates and human rights observers, because many of these migrants, again, are alleging that they fled their home countries because of persecution and threats. And if they're forced to return, they could be in danger.
And then given this precedent that's being set, should we expect more deportations to countries that the U.S. has severe travel warnings for?
Yes, the Trump administration has made it abundantly clear, Nicole, that if you are in this country illegally and cannot be deported to your native country, the U.S. will find ways to deport you somewhere else away from American soil, including countries with questionable human rights records, including South Sudan, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which, as you know, is currently dealing with a serious Ebola outbreak. And so the administration says, yes, those third country deportations will continue for the time being.
All right, Camilo Montoya-Galvez, thank you so much for your reporting, as always.